Here at the Proximity Podcast, we live in the dangerous middle, holding these tensions in love, full of grace and truth. This podcast should be seen both as a conversation and a connection with our friends and neighbors to talk about the things that matter most. Not every view that is shared on the Proximity Podcast is the opinion or the value of Mission Church. Welcome to Proximity, and today we have an episode called The Separation of Church and Hate, and I want to introduce to you a friend of mine, Pastor Clynt Reddy. Welcome, Clynt. How are you?
Hey, Danny. I'm awesome. It's so great to be on this podcast.
It's good to have you. Now, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do so our listeners can understand a little bit about you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've got a story, if you will. So
please.
I'm an immigrant, came to the United States from Durban, South Africa when I was 9 years old. And, my mom and dad, they had these opportunities to come to they had three different states they could have chose. California, Texas, and then the great state of Minnesota.
Why not?
Yeah. And so June 10th, 1996, we landed here in what was not the frozen tundra. It was amazing.
Yeah,
and we were high-fiving each other. We're like, man, look at what we picked. This is paradise. And then October came. And we were like, whoa, okay. We were living in South Africa. We did not ever see snow in our entire lives, let alone temperatures that would dip below 30 degrees. So we were in for a treat. And then we would ask my dad, okay, we see the pictures of California. Everything's bigger in Texas. Why Minnesota? And he said, we were in a library in South Africa and we were looking at this book that just talks about 50 different states. And we found this section about Minnesota. And we read the first paragraph. And it said that this state values family and education. And they said, those are our values, so we're coming here. And then we would kind of poke at my dad later on and be like, I'm sure there was more. Like if you read even just a few more paragraphs, it would have told you about the sub-zero temperatures. Maybe that would have swayed us one way or the other. But nonetheless, we came here. And, my family grew up as believers. My grandmother was the first Christian in our family. And so she was just really a spiritual influence for me in many, many ways. And so that, I think in hindsight, I probably didn't know it at the time, but it really formed a call for ministry for me.
So good.
And now I serve as the executive pastor at Westwood Church, which is down in Chanhassen, Minnesota.
Clynt, I love that you share about what brought you to Minnesota. Yeah. And I appreciate your dad's just conversation around values because it's really about who you are before what you did. This is who we are at the core. That's why we're going to go where we're going to go.
Right.
And with all things, we trust that God has been a part of that. But in this season of life that we've got right now, Westwood has been a significant church to the region. And in this series called Separation of Church and Hate, I want to talk to you a little bit about humility because it feels like we live in kind of the perpetual seventh grade dance, boys on one side, girls on the other, or, this view on this side, this view on that side, and nobody wants to get in the middle.
Yeah.
And so, when it comes to figuring out how to rediscover humility in such a polarized, divided world, it's important for the church to lead in that conversation. And so, I chose you to be that person that walks through it. And so I just wanted to give a little bit. When you look at where Westwood is as a church, as a region geographically, but also see in the state, is there anything in general that you go, this is what we see God doing right now in us and why we love the church that we're a part of?
Yeah, I mean, our community is one that it was founded under something called Pastor Joel is our lead pastor.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about the Abrahamic covenant.
Okay.
So just this idea that as the church and all of us as followers of Jesus, we are blessed to be a blessing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the posture the church has really tried to embody since day one, is realizing that we live with open hands. With one hand, we're gratefully going to receive everything God wants to give us because we know we can't outgive him.
Yeah.
And then with the other hand, we're just going to be as generous as we can be. Everything is for a purpose. And I think the church has kind of lived and leaned into that, realizing that this community that we're a part of, this is part of what it means for us to be called here. We're blessed to be a blessing for this area. And the church, I think, has done an amazing job living that out with really bold action. Like a great example of this would be when the church acquired property in the Chanhassen area in the early 2000s. There was a 1960s home that was on the property.
Okay.
And and that can be a gift in a number of ways. It could be a parsonage, could be missions housing. And for the first 10, 15 years of the church, that was primarily what it was used for. But then the church commissioned a study about 10 years ago, 15 years ago now. And they said, what are the unmet needs in our community? And the congregation went out and talked with people, neighbors, school teachers, principals, healthcare providers, just did as exhaustive a job as they could to hear what are the needs. Mm-hmm. And, this is the southwest metro of the Twin Cities, a fairly affluent area.
Yeah.
And the number one need that rose to the top of the list was transitional housing for teens who were homeless.
Wow.
Which you would just never think. Like,
no.
Really? That?
No.
And there was no shelter in that part of the area. And so we have this 1960s home. And the church said, what if we could meet the need with this house?
Yeah.
What if we could kind of repurpose it, maybe bring in a partner to help us with programming for kids that are in very difficult places? And what if we gave that as a gift back to the community to say, no, if there's no shelter, we can be a shelter. Mm. We can be a refuge. We can be a place that affords what we've been blessed with to be a blessing to others. And so it was called the Hope House. Mm-hmm. And there are hundreds of teens every single year have an opportunity to have up to a 90-day stay to just get back on their feet.
Wow.
And the kind of the unfortunate piece of this, I was just trying to figure out the word. I think the word isn't unfortunate. The unfortunate piece of it is we don't have enough beds.
Yeah.
And so we're in an expansion project right now to increase the facility so that we can have more. And I say unfortunate because you just think about that. These are kids who are 13 to 19 years old.
Wow.
And, because of broken homes or because they've made some poor choices or who knows what is maybe the impetus behind that, but they're on the streets.
Yeah.
And in southwest suburbs, maybe you think, oh, that can't be that bad. But no, the same kind of things that could happen on the streets and maybe in inner city, they can happen in the southwest metro or in any metro area. So we're doing our best to afford grace.
Yeah.
And it's to be a blessing posture.
Yeah. I 20 years ago plus, I was on the west side of Indianapolis, and we did a similar study. And Hendricks County near Indianapolis at the time, I don't know what it is now, but was the second most affluent county in the state. And we did a similar study, and we found out that we had homeless students, kids without addresses that had been couch surfing or whatever, that would sleep in our parks at night. And you don't think about 13 to 19-year-olds being homeless. Oftentimes we all have our own paradigm of what homelessness looks like. And frankly, as a parent with young adults, I'm not overtly concerned about why they're homeless as much as they're homeless. Right. How do I help?
Right.
And I think there's such an important need to not only just find a bed for them, but to help them find the empowerment resources that validate their dignity, that give them honor to who they are and how God has created them, and help them choose a clear path forward of, one, that hopefully is founded on Jesus, and two, best stewards their gifts as they move forward. So let's talk a little bit about just obviously being the fact that we live in Minnesota, the fact that we live in Hennepin County, the largest county in the state, the fact that Minnesota is known for a lot of things, politically, racially, economically. We have some of the best businesses in the world. We have some of the greatest tension in our communities.
Sure.
And so you can really vacillate between the pluses and the minuses. The church has a unique place to step into this time in this moment, but I feel like a lot of churches and followers of Jesus can be caught off guard, found in their own world rather than the world, serving as both witness of salt and light. Why do you think it is that the church in these moments is caught off guard, and how can we begin to better be prepared for the curveballs that come our direction?
Sure. Okay, so I've been thinking about this question a lot.
Okay.
Just in the sense of how did we get here?
Oh yeah.
So I've been doing some reading on how we understand truth, just as people.
Okay.
And I think there's been a progression that we're living in the middle of.
Okay.
And some of the language that kind of gets connected to truth is this idea of modernity and post-modernity.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard this language before, but it really helps us kind of discern, where are we locating truth? Like, where does it come from?
Yeah.
And in a modern mindset, truth was very and is very transcendental.
Okay.
It comes from a source that's outside of maybe what our own humanness can connect to.
Yep.
That doesn't always have to be divine, though.
Okay.
So a modern mindset even kind of comes from this Renaissance idea that like it's found in laws that govern the universe or things like that. But Christian perspective would say, from a modern mindset, like, no. The truth giver is God himself.
Yeah.
And we've lived in an era, many of us in the church has tried to react to it and understand it, that we've called postmodern.
Yeah.
And the locus of where we find truth shifted from something transcendental to something very individualistic. It came, this is kind of what birthed this whole idea of secular humanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truth is found within.
Yeah.
And that means the logical end to that is I'll have mine and you have yours.
Right.
And for a long time, we've been thinking that is the prevailing truth construction model.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think what 2020 and beyond revealed is, we call it at Westwood sometimes the CPR season.
Okay.
Where COVID, politics, and race kind of mushroomed to this thing where you couldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
And it started to expose where we thought we were together in terms of what we believed and how we believed things, but we really were different. We were fracturing right before our eyes. And I think what 2020 and beyond revealed was that we don't live in a postmodern world anymore. We live in what some people are calling the meta-modern world.
Okay.
And this is a fascinating kind of idea, because what it suggests is that where we find truth is no longer transcendental.
Okay.
It's no longer individual.
Okay.
It's become communal.
Okay. Okay.
So this is the idea of blockchain.
Okay. Yep.
Right? This is the idea of distributed trust. So I'll give you a good example of this. So if you and I were to try to find the best burger in town, 50 years ago, we would have been very inclined to think about that burger connected to a name brand or an institution.
Yep.
So the truth of what was really going to be a great burger was held transcendentally almost.
Yeah.
In something that we couldn't even touch.
Okay.
And we would just look and say, yep, we're going to go to Applebee's or McDonald's or whatever name brand kind of had associated with itself with we do the best burger. In today's world, if you and I are looking for a great burger, what I'll tend to do, maybe you do the same thing, is we're going to Google best burger near me. And I'm going to look at ratings and I'm going to look at number of stars and number of ratings.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use that as my truth filter.
Yeah.
If 3,000 people gave this thing 4.8 stars, I'm going to say, So the trust that I have on what's true got distributed to a bunch of different people that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the same preferences or not.
Yeah.
But that became a truth claim for me. You and I grew up, when we were growing up, we were told never to get in a car with a stranger. Now, anytime we need a ride to the airport,
totally,
I get in a car with a stranger because they have 3,000 rides and 5 stars.
Yeah.
Trust them.
Yeah.
The truth is they're going to be a reliable source of transportation for me. So I agree. Yep. That's where we're going to go. So this meta-modern world that we live in, the truth claims that we have start to get associated with the communities that we're a part of. And so if I'm part of one certain ideological perspective or another, I'm going to be very inclined to filter the understanding of the truth claims that come toward me through that lens, which can create a really strong base of how we understand what's happening. But it also creates a really calcified base of how we understand that's happening. In other words, it becomes very difficult for us to filter other perspective because the rest of that community that we're a part of, no matter how big it is or how small it is, will kind of be an immune system of sorts.
Yeah.
And it starts to reject ideas that don't kind of fall in line with how we think things should operate. And as a result, it starts to pull apart our even ability to understand people differently because we're not realizing how insulated our perspective is based on the communities that we decide to identify with. That's the polarizing nature of the world we're living in. And the church isn't immune to that either.
Right.
And one of the unfortunate parts about evangelical church right now is it may even begin to be fracturing around ideological lines more than it's fracturing around theological lines.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we are talking about the sociological, kind of psychological dynamics of what's happening in our culture today. So let me just put a caveat in there and say that we would both have a very orthodox faith.
Yeah.
We believe that truth is found transcendent in the person of Jesus.
Correct.
That God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit is truth in and of itself. And we trust that the scriptures, the Bible, is where we find our truth that both enforces and empowers and educates us into how we view reality in the world that we're a part of. However, with that being said, we cannot deny the social dynamics that are happening around us because oftentimes our peer group or the, dare I say, trending dynamics of our culture shape how we are. Now, if we're not careful and if we're not savvy in navigating our world and we're trying to find the right burger, we may find a 5 out of 5 stars that's only had 3 people.
Right.
And then we show up and find out that their mom, their grandma, and their aunt ate there and it's not clear.
Exactly.
So look for the 3,000.
Exactly.
So I'm with you there. So let's root this for a moment in a little bit of a theological background. When we think about scripture and we think about pictures of humility, I have a name pops into my head, Jesus. It is a great example. But I love the passages, obviously in the moment where Jesus is found washing the disciples' feet, such a radical, explicit experience almost that people are like, what is he doing?
Right.
Why would this is not something meant for him, but yet Jesus took on the very form of a servant and took the place to meet people in their most vulnerable moments, to serve them in significant ways, and reminds his followers that this is really our posture as people. And then you look, of course, when Paul writes the Christ hymn, which is one of my favorite passages because it's a cultural worship poem, for lack of better terms, that got included in the scripture because it's significant. But it is such a, dare I say, a creedal verse because it's Jesus who considered equality with God something not to be held on to, kept for himself, but gave it up, which takes us back to where we started. Open-handedness, blessing, conversation. And of course, it's the great anthem that reminds us that there will be a day when every knee will bow. Passage says every knee should bow, every tongue should confess, meaning it should and it will. That's how it's written. But there is that image that's just rooted that our following of Jesus is taking on a posture of bent knees, open hands, and an extended face towards God saying, God, for your glory and your blessing, how do we live in this? And yet we find ourselves at times listening for sound bites, listening for rhetoric, listening for keywords, and missing out, I think sometimes, even in my own journey, on what the Spirit is trying to say, whether it's in a message, whether it's in a conversation with friends, or whether it's in a random circumstance in the world around us. And so let's push on this a little bit. I think sometimes Christians confuse humility with silence. There's 2 choices. We either get really loud or we get really silent. But true humility actually moves closer to people, engages with people. And so how can we embody that kind of posture in our neighborhoods and in our online spaces as a church? Does Westwood have kind of a mantra or a practice that you empower your people towards in these polarizing moments?
Well, I think that is the gravitational pull that we're trying to work against. Is this meta-modern world, which will just kind of pull us towards sitting at the polarities of how we understand life or how we understand our convictions. That's what we're trying to counter, is rather than move away, can we move toward? Yeah. And that's why I love the word proximity. I think this whole podcast is just in step with what needs to be the countercultural gravitational pull for those of us who follow Jesus. If the sociological and psychological constructs are pulling us this direction, the way of Jesus is to pull us closer in. And the Christ hymn, I love that. Well, I just, when you think about that, Paul including that in his letter, maybe one of the earliest hymns that was in the church.
Yeah.
And we just have that right in our scriptures. And you can tell the focus of that adoration is to Jesus.
Yeah.
And who he is and what he invites us to do, which is draw close, to tabernacle among one another.
Yeah.
So I think, at Westwood, do we have maybe a mantra toward that? No, not necessarily, but we use the word proximity all the time.
Wow.
I mean, and one of the things Joel loves to say is anytime we walk into a room, we can quickly become a here I am person.
Okay. What's that mean?
You walk in and just like, you have a posture that maybe unintentionally or sometimes intentionally draws the attention back to you. Here I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus if we can walk into a room and be a there you are person, how that embodies Jesus.
Yeah.
Every space that he walked into, he wasn't calling attention to himself.
Right.
He was always a there you are kind of person.
Yeah.
And a there you are to the least of these.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the other pieces of how his eyes were attuned. It tells us the eyes of God. When God walks into a room, his eyes will almost inevitably kind of draw to those that may be on the fringes or on the outskirts. And I think that's a beautiful picture of humility. One of the first books I read as an intern at a church.
Okay.
And this whole internship program, it was in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
This whole internship program was built around this idea that your calling will be, the lid of your calling will be your character.
Okay.
Or another way to say it, your calling will not be able to outpace your character.
Yep.
And so one of the key virtues, the key things that they wanted to instill in us was humility. What does it mean to carry that posture like Jesus did? And I was handed a book by a guy named Andrew Murray. One of those amazing writers who just captured it was a tiny book, but in the most concise way, it just captures the most profound truth. He was a South African as well.
Okay.
And in the book, Andrew Murray says that humility is not thinking about yourself less, or it's not thinking less of yourself.
Yes.
It's thinking about yourself less.
That's so well said.
And sometimes I kind of fall into this trap that, says humility, I just need to push down all the things that maybe I feel like God's entrusted to me. And it's like, oh, no, I'm, it's all good, And it's like, no, you can elevate that. You can embrace that.
Yeah.
But it's when you're walking into rooms and when you're just going through your day, kind of managing your own thoughts, how much does it always come back to you?
Yeah.
And humility, I think the depth of humility is a quotient of how other-centered we are. It's why when we walk in a room, we're going to be there you are versus here I am.
Yeah.
It's why when the gravitational pull of the world is going to pull us apart, humility is going to say, no, we're going to come together because I care about the person.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the people that we're trying to unite and bring together. And so I think that if I could give Westwood a kind of a language, it would be, there you are.
Yeah.
Let's draw in.
That's so important because I think intentionally or unintentionally, we all drift back to ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially in new places or new spaces where we walk into environments where we're not in control. I walk into my house, I don't second guess, where things are, what's going on. Things are where I put them or where I want them. And, it functions. The power could go out and I could still navigate my house.
Sure.
You take me to a new church or you invite me over to somebody else's house, I automatically take a different posture. And you can find yourself drifting back and drifting back and drifting back. It's nice to know that there is followers of Jesus who are kind of checking themselves at the door to say, if humility is going to happen, that I'm going to change the way I think about myself, not as a lesser value, but a lesser focus, and I can prioritize probably who I am and who God's created me to be more for others as well. It's going to stretch and engage us into a faith expression because we're stepping into new territory, we're stepping into new opportunity. But I got to imagine somebody's listening to this going, yeah, well, I've taken that risk.
Yeah.
I've tried that.
Yeah.
You don't know the community I live in, or you don't know what's happened, or you don't know my background. And so how do you begin to address the hurt, and I'll use two other words, but hurt, callousness, and apathy. Hurt, callousness, and apathy, because each one's different.
Yeah.
Hurt is clearly something that's happened to me. Callousness is something that I've allowed to harden to a point that it's losing its feeling.
Right.
And apathy is sometimes even the mental choice of just saying, I'm over it.
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
detaching
worth it.
out of it. Yeah.
What would you say to a person who's walking through that? And how do you get them to step back in to re-engage? Because they probably had to step out for good purpose.
Totally.
How do you begin to build that bridge in the church with followers of Jesus, knowing that there's so much at stake in the world we're a part of today?
Oh, I think that scenario and circumstance is not isolating or uncommon. I think many of us, if we pay attention to kind of what's happening in our heart, we all probably will realize, wow, there's our heart's trying to self-protect. That's why it gets hard. It just want to feel the pain and the hurt and the rejection. Yeah. Because it's all, I think for all of us as followers of Jesus, there's a well-intentioned effort for us to try to build a bridge, to have understanding, or even to try to get someone to see something from our perspective. Yeah. But again, because we're sometimes maybe unaware, or we don't even realize how much we're also a product and being shaped by some of the other psychological and sociological constructs that are around us, we're not even realizing that we're fracturing. Yeah. I think God's a healer. I think some of it is, I don't know if there's a self-help kind of, 10 steps to, all righty, how do you get back on the horse and just try again? Some of it is our hearts are in a place where they're tired, they're fatigued, they're broken. Yeah. Because there are relationships that are in our lives that look very different because of the polarizing nature of how we're trying to both understand what is true, what is real, what is good and right in the eyes of the Lord. Yeah. And we've had denominational splits since the beginning of the church around these things. Totally. So it's not like, even though we may live in a heightened time of polarization because some of these sociological and psychological constructs, we're not immune to it. It's not like this isn't a part of the human story that we'll find ourselves fraying and seeing things differently from other people. When I was in a class around like pastoral counseling, just a funny saying that one of the professors had, he was like, hey, just know, no matter how thin the pancake is, there's always two sides. And so you're going to have people, hanging out together, trying to understand a situation. You're going to have two people come in. Yeah. And even if they see things pretty close to one another, they're still going to have two angles to the conversation. I'm going to have to use that in a message. That's so good. It just sticks with you. So whether it's a crepe or whether it's one of those Dutch oven pancakes, there are going to be two sides to it. And we just have to understand that. Yeah. And so that's where this humility piece comes through again. But if I could speak directly to those that are maybe calloused, apathetic, wounded, and hurt, some of it is maybe the realization that all of us can be there. Maybe it's to different degrees. Yeah. And our hearts are just doing what they're designed to do. Yeah. They don't want our hearts were not designed to feel that. Our hearts were designed to feel unity and goodness and love. Yeah. And when we take the risk, truly, I think this is a courageous step. When we take the risk to try to build a bridge, try to better understand, or to try to share our conviction, and it gets met, it gets met with everything that we hoped it wouldn't get met with. Yeah. I don't blame people for being in a place where it's like, what's the point? What's the point? But we serve a God who raises the dead. Yeah. Truly. Like that this is the power of a resurrection God. Yeah. And so no one's too far gone. No heart is too far gone to re-engage in the peacemaking, in the truth-seeking work of Jesus. Yeah. But I think we can pay attention to how we're feeling about that. And we can find places to process with great people in our lives, pastors, leaders, friends. But I don't think we can discount how much we need God to heal our broken, wounded, and apathetic hearts at times in order for us to kind of feel the motivation to go back and do things. When I was, this internship program that I was in was really, I think it was very formative for me, young 20s. And they said, one of the things I just remember from it is that the tendency for us when we're dealing with difficult conversations is we'll have thick skin or thin skin and hard hearts. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be, that's the human tendency. Yep. But the way of Jesus would say, can we have thick skin and soft hearts. That the thickness of our skin can almost be a way to help our hearts be protected. Because if challenge hits our heart and it stings it, the heart's natural inclination is to just get a little bit harder exterior, so it doesn't have to feel that again. And we start to detach emotionally. And so if we can, this is one of the hardest things. One of the easiest things to say, one of the hardest things to do is to not take things personally. But the thickness of our skin, I think, can help us in that. And part of how we grow our skin to be thicker is to do our best to understand what it's like to walk in another person's shoe. The more we can be there you are people and understand the motivation and do our best to understand that the intentions that people have aren't to hurt us, even though the impact may be that. And understand that we're all in a formation journey. All of us arrive maybe to certain convictions or conclusions, not just out of thin air, but out of the results of the families we grew up in, the education systems we are a part of, just the ways that we've been formed as people. It doesn't suggest we don't have personal responsibility, but the more that we can be there you are, I can understand where you got there. It can help our skin grow to a place where we don't take it personally and then put on the other person. They were just out to get me. That's, I think, what's a real troubling part of the current polarization that we're in, is we put it on the other person because we're primarily, here I am, versus think about there you are.
Feel like we need to strike up the band, have an invitation hymn at this point, and probably all come forward on some level. Because honestly, I'm like, man, I've resembled that picture or that experience oftentimes. And the pragmatic advice about, toughen your skin or thicken skin and still a tender heart. There's such a need in our culture today for vulnerably authentic leaders and people who can step into this dangerous middle. It should not surprise us that Scripture talks about God having the ability to take a stone heart and giving us a new one. The reality is we talk a lot about that at times, usually at like conversion, but really we all need at our churches and in our relationships a cabinet off to the side that says heart exchange, where we can go over and take our stone heart and say, I'm sorry, I need another one. We got to start over today. I got to start over that last conversation, whatever it is, because what seems to be at stake is we will begin to set the pace of the world rather than the pace of the church if we keep up with the polarization of the world around us.
For sure.
And we all want to see people come to faith. We all want to see our communities transformed. But transformation needs to happen on a daily basis. And it starts with a posture of humility in many ways. So want to kind of wrap this up a little bit because I think we could probably ask 3 or 4 more questions to start a whole nother, this is part 1, this is part 2. But if you were to list, you have a deep love for Westwood, for Pastor Joel. I hear you talk with him about in great affection. If you were to encapsulate just the beauty of the congregation of the church that you're a part of and how it stands in today's world as a city on a hill and salt of the earth, what is the picture that you would give of the hope that you have through the local church for the world through the eyes of Westwood? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about that already.
Totally.
Just in the sense of open hands, blessed to be a blessing. There you are. The picture that this church has embraced and embodied is one that's other-centered. And you go back to the Christ hymn in Philippians 2. That's it. That's what it all gets reduced down to, is thinking about others more than you think about yourself. And the God of the universe. The God of the universe, who had everything and does have everything, says, I can lay that down. I will lay that down. I want to lay that down.
That's
for the sake of drawing near, for the sake of tabernacling among us, of being proximate to the people that are created in his very image. People that we talk about our hearts being broken. I mean, God's heart just breaks when he sees the creation that he's put forth and it not being exactly as it was meant to be. But the hope of the gospel is that it's going to be made right. It's going to be made new. But it takes risk. It takes sacrifice. And I think if I could give Westwood a picture, it would be there's probably an upper limit all of us have to how far are we really willing to go to build a bridge, to be a peacemaker, to exude love. And I think all of us feel like, how much would I give up? How much could I give up?
Yeah.
And I think because we want to live with open hands, the picture I have for Westwood is we would be one of those churches that people are like, they gave how much up?
Yeah.
They're willing to go how far?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we're just trying to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And he did it all.
Yeah.
He gave it all. So I think that to me could be an inspiring, but also scary, risky, dangerous, radical approach to what it means to be a humble church in this time that we live in.
Yeah.
Is how much are we willing to give up?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we follow a savior who is accused of being a drunkard and a glutton because of the people he associated with. And so we should not be fearful of what people may say or what people may think. We should be mindful of the rhetoric that's around us. But this is a day for us to live by faith, to trust the pace and the presence of God's Spirit as God leads us into grand opportunities for reconciliation and forgiveness. I can't say thank you enough for who you are and for who Westwood is. So Clynt, thanks for joining us.
Oh, here. Indeed. It's a joy.
Maybe we'll do this again. But let me just say to everybody who's listening, can we just challenge you today that your heart would stay vulnerable, that your eyes would stay open to what God is doing, that your hands would be available, and if necessary, use words. Let people know the goodness of God. But as always, we like to finish with our time together. Just be reminding of Galatians 5:25. May we stay in step with the Spirit. Whether we're going to step up, step out, step back, step over, wherever we go, may it always be with the pace of the Spirit.